NoInfer. When working with parameters in TypeScript, we had two options so far. So one is basically to hardcode the type of the parameter, so that when we pass a certain value, TypeScript is going to verify whether what we pass is what it expects. If it does, then it's okay. If it's not, then it throws an error, and that's basically it. The other option was to make it generic, so that first of all, we need to create the type parameter on the signature of a function or of a type interface class, whatever that is. And then when we invoke the function, when we instantiate a class, etc., the type t would get inferred from whatever way we call it. In case of a function, that would be whatever are the parameters that we're going to call it with. So we've had two options. But what if you find yourself in a situation where you would like the type parameter to be inferred from one of the places but not the other, or some of the places but not all of them? And this is where NoInfer kicks in. So let's say that in our case we have the options with default function, which accepts a sequence of available options, whatever that is. Let's say that this is just colors, and there would be a default option over here. Here we've got the yellow value. And the thing is, we need to make sure on the type level that the value over here is just one of the members over this sequence over here. So when we take a look at simply using just a generic type parameter named t, by default what we can see is that this gets inferred as string. Why is that? This is because of default type inference for arrays, and that's basically here the fact that if we have certain string values, this is going to be inferred as string array. That's because this is most often what we want, not always, but default type inference choices are basically reflected by what are the most common scenarios. So what we want to do here is basically to make them more narrow so that it's not just all strings, but red, green, and blue as a union. So what we could do is basically narrow it down to a const. So from options, what TypeScript can figure out is that it would be a union of red, green, and blue, and from default options that would be yellow. And this is exactly what we have over here. So that unfortunately TypeScript would need to widen the type of t so that it would be accepted by both of the parameters that we pass over here. By the way, there is no need to run the asConst, the const type assertion, but we can leverage what is called a const type parameter, and in short, this basically does the same thing, so that we don't need to pass the expression, just make the type parameter inference be as narrow as possible, similar to what the const assertion does. Still, we've got a problem that yellow gets added into the union because both of the parameters apply and make a difference to the type inference of the type parameter t. So this is where NoInfer comes into play. So if we have a place in which we want type inference not to kick in, we just need to wrap the parameter, the type parameter, with NoInfer, which is basically an intrinsic type, which means that's basically an internal which is exposed to us, developers using TypeScript, but we cannot see how it's defined. So yeah, it basically means that default option is not going to affect how type parameter t gets resolved. So only the options parameter would affect what t gets resolved to. So it's basically red, green, and blue, and we can clearly see that yellow is not among them. So we will get an error that yellow is not assignable to type red, green, and blue union. So whenever you have a situation in which you would like some of the type parameter, some of the parameters to affect what is the resolution of a type parameter, but not all of them, NoInfer is exactly what you need in this case.